Hello and welcome everyone to our third membership meeting of 2020. Couple of housekeeping notes, friendly reminder to put your settings on mute. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat function. We'll have Melanie Bamba Milinkovic fielding questions for our speaker toward the end of the programming. So feel free to use that function as you have questions. And we are recording this event so we can share at a later date for our members. I'd like to extend a special thanks to our Programs and Seminars Committee for putting this virtual event together. Thank you so much. Our goal during this time is to continue our BOMA mission and maintain our usual luncheon programming with these new virtual events. We thank you for being flexible and encourage you to stay apprised of BOMA news and information, especially now as BOMA has its finger on the pulse of all industry relevant info on the COVID crisis as it pertains to our local mandates, including state and federal guidelines. Please visit the BOMA website if you haven't done so already. At the beginning of the year, we announced this year's BOMA theme, Your Future in Focus. Today's guest speaker and topic are incredibly important to our future as our state and local officials help provide a roadmap toward meeting our recycling and waste diversion goals. We're looking forward to hearing more about this topic soon with our speaker here shortly. And speaking of the future, I'd like to highlight a few scholarship award recipients who clearly have a bright career in their future. We have Paris Cox, the recipient of the Jack Moshkett Scholarship to obtain her RPA. Samantha Nodden, the recipient of the Jack Moshkett Scholarship to obtain her RPA as well. And we have Hogan Willis, the BOMA Foundation Scholarship recipient, presented by our BOMA Annual Supporting Partners. We'd like to extend a congratulations to them. Hopefully one or all of them are on this event. Congratulations on pursuing your education. And now we'd like to provide a thank you to our sponsors. In order to make these events happen in our new temporary normal, we count on the support of our generous sponsors. On behalf of BOMA San Diego, I want to extend a sincere thank you to all of our 2020 annual supporting partners. Our platinum sponsors, Able Services, AO Reed, Allied Universal, Brightview, Duffy Power Service, Harbro, RSI Roofing, our gold sponsors, ABM, Alta Roofing and Waterproofing, ASAP Drain Guys and Plumbing, J&M Keystone, Land Care, Paragon Services Engineering, Securitas. Our energy sponsors, EDF Renewables, SDG&E, and our silver sponsors, A+ Tree Care, AMS Paving, ATI, Benchmark Landscape, CAM Services, CCS Facility Services, CNI Roofing, Cox Business, Dowling Construction, Greater San Diego Air Conditioning Company, GSH Group, Hazard Center, Kimball, Tyree, and St. John, Lot Management, New Way Landscape and Tree Services, and PMS Janitorial. I'd especially like to thank our May luncheon sponsors, AO Reed, Power Services, Alta Roofing and Waterproofing, J&M Keystone, A+ Tree Care, and PMS Janitorial. Please be sure and support our annual sponsors. You can find them on the directory sponsor page on bomasd.org. At this time, I'd like to invite Gary Griffin from Harbro, our platinum sponsor, to tell us more about their company and their exciting merger.
Well, hi, everybody. It's great to see your faces. Miss seeing all you guys, and hope your families are all safe and healthy. And, hopefully we'll be seeing everybody at Tom Ham's again soon enough. So I got some really big news this last week. Harbro, we teamed up or merged with another emergency services company that's based west of the Rockies. So we now have increased coverage pretty much from coast to coast. Still do the same exact work. We have the same great workers. You guys are going to still be stuck with me for a while, and we're just going to be able to be helpful on more of a national level. So if you guys have any questions, you could always feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help answer them for you. Otherwise, I put together a short video just to talk about what we're doing during this whole pandemic to help out our colleagues and our friends. There you go, Melanie.
Reconstruction for properties damaged by water, fire, mold, or any other disasters, including the COVID-19 pandemic. Back in 1961, Harborough was nothing more than our founder, Harold Brown, and a dream to run a successful construction business. Due to these humble roots, Harborough knows the blood, sweat, and tears it takes to start and run a small business. What many people often overlook is the fact that it takes support from the entire community to make a small business successful. And without all those who have supported us over the years, there is no way Harborough could be who we are today. So, in order to ensure we keep the dream of small business ownership alive during these trying times, we are doing what we can to support the small businesses in our regions. As time went on, Harborough has continued to grow from a small business. Now that we've merged with Blue Sky, we have 33 offices between the West and the East Coast, making it so that there is no loss in the country in which our team can assist. Something else we pride ourselves on is education. With the current pandemic and the stay-at-home orders in place these last few months, we've needed to come up with more creative ways to continue to be that valuable resource and partner to our clients from afar. This is why we recently started Harborough Live. Harborough Lives are quick, informative sessions to go over how the latest news will affect the industry, what to keep an eye open for, and to simply answer your questions to make sure we're all informed. So please reach out if you're interested in attending, and I'll be happy to send you a link to the next one. In regards to COVID-19, Harborough has stepped up to find new ways to keep our clients' minds at ease. With the social distancing and shelter-in-place restrictions, we are aware that you may have had to adjust the way you do business. Though many businesses have been forced to close, Harborough has remained in full operation. Perhaps your property has been exposed to the coronavirus, or maybe your team would like the peace of mind knowing they're returning to a sanitary work environment. Harborough is here to help through the application of an environmentally safe disinfectant. Because our team and our clients' health and safety are of paramount importance to us, we are following recommendations provided by the CDC, federal, and local officials. In order to best serve you, our employees will be screened for health clearance and will continue to report to work so that we are, as always, available to come to your aid when you need it most. These are challenging days for all of us, but if we work together to keep each other safe, we can take care of the health of ourselves and our families, all while Harborough, a division of Blue Sky, continues to provide you with the excellent service that you have come to rely on.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, thanks. And as I was saying earlier, if there's any questions that you guys have that I can help you out with, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to get back to you.
Thanks, Gary, and exciting news about your merger. Congrats.
Thank you very much.
And now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Kenneth Prue. Kenneth Prue leads a creative and high-performing team that oversees the planning, development, and implementation of citywide efforts to achieve state-mandated waste diversion goals and long-term solid waste management needs, including the city's zero waste plan, recycling ordinances on a wide variety of waste reduction and recycling programs. He is a graduate of San Diego State University with a degree in public administration. Ken has been with the City of San Diego for 21 years. Please welcome Kenneth Prue.
Good morning, or good afternoon, everyone. Let me take 1 second here to get the screen going. Oh, great. Well, thank you so much for having me and letting me participate in your web-based meeting here. And I'll give you a quick rundown on some waste reduction and recycling programs here in the City of San Diego and that affect the region as well as statewide, and some upcoming changes to the requirements that are coming here in the near future. Oh, maybe. Take me 1 second here. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Oh, here we go. Sorry. So just a quick background. We've been at it for quite a number of years with the City of San Diego, and started collecting collection services in 1919. And we currently collect from about 285,000 residences, primarily single-family residences, but some small multifamily as well. I included these pictures. The top left, actually the two photos are of the property. It's near our 20th and B collection yard. The name of the street escapes me, but it's there just east of downtown. But it was really great because the top left photo was from I think at least 60 years ago, but it was back when it was early a modified pickup with a tipping bed to collect the waste with multiple people out there. And then fast forward to the lower picture, that was probably about 8 or 10 years ago, but it was an automated recycling vehicle and one-person crew. And now we even have those vehicles running on natural gas. So it's a real big change from where we've gone from collecting it years ago in a pickup and feeding it to hogs and things, and then now automated recycling services. So this picture here is of rubbish dumps, which were very common back years ago and around the time of World War II and that. And the map to the right, it may be a little hard to see, but the dots on the map are various rubbish dumps that you'd see that a lot of it was really south of 8 and kind of in the area around 94 or north of 94. And that was in large part, that's where the population was centralized way back then. But I wanted to include it just because it's interesting. And then as we transition, this photo here was actually, you may not be able to see the sign, but it says Mission Bay Sanitary Fill, first day of rubbish disposal, July 24th, 1952. And so this area here is right there on SeaWorld, literally where SeaWorld Drive is, as well as parts of the parking lots for SeaWorld and the South Shores boat launch, that general area. And I remember when I was a kid driving on Mission Bay or on SeaWorld Drive, and you'd get all the dips where the waste was settling. It's a lot like 52 is these days, but it was kind of, I thought it was interesting. And we fast forward to now, we have the Miramar landfill, which was opened in 1959, December 7, 1959. And what used to be out in the sticks, and I'll show you more in the next photo, but now it is very centrally located. And it's operated by the City of San Diego as one of 3 large landfills in the region, and it's currently estimated to close by 2028 unless we have additional waste diversion activities or efforts to push the capacity out further. This is a quick aerial shot, and you can see, if you're not familiar with it, basically Miramar landfill is right there adjacent to Highway 52 in between 805 and 5, and you'll see in the top end of the screen is the runway for MCAS Miramar. And currently, for each day it operates, Miramar landfill buries about 2,800 tons per day of material, and that's about 900,000 tons a year. And as far as all generators located within the City of San Diego city limits, generate over 1.4 million tons per year of disposal. So that's not even counting all the things that are recycled. Quick snapshot of how the landfills are designed. Miramar landfill, where it's operating now, is a modern landfill, and it has a multi-layer liner system, and it also collects leachate, so liquids, as well as landfill gas, and they capture as much as possible. And the landfill gas is used, it runs through these cogeneration engines where it basically makes power that then is used to help power the landfill, but probably more importantly, the Metropolitan Biosolids Center next door that Public Utilities Department operates, and that takes and processes all of our sewage solids. It also helps the water reclamation plant off Miramar Road in the Pure Water program, and helps power the base at MCAS Miramar. So we're able to, it's unfortunate that that gas is generated on one hand, but on the other hand, it's good that we're able to put it to beneficial uses. When we look at what's in our trash, so that over 1.4 million just in the City of San Diego, and the City of San Diego is about half of the overall county. So I mean, there's a lot of waste still being disposed, even though there's a lot of great recycling efforts. And about 76% is potentially recoverable. So whether it could be reused or recycled or composted. And if you look at the chart, a lot of these things are things that you all would deal with quite a bit in your daily life with daily operations, whether it's construction and demolition materials from tenant improvements and other things. That's 25% of the overall disposed waste stream. And this is based on a study we did in 2011, 2012, and it looked at all the generation within the city. And the numbers still hold pretty true now. But paper, bottles, cans, it's a lot of it. But the largest single commodity is organics, or group of commodities. And so 39%, and that's things from yard trimmings to Of course, food waste. Food waste alone was about 15%, or about 200,000 tons a year disposed. And that's not counting what we're already composting. This is just what's going in the landfill and is being buried. So there's a lot more work to do. To help do that, we've had a large suite of programs over the years. Large suite of programs over the years to reduce waste and reuse and recycle. What was adopted in 2015 as a component, it ended up being one of the main pillars of the climate action plan that the city has, is the zero waste plan. And we identified a goal of 75% by 2020, 90% by 2035, and a goal of 100% by 2040, knowing that it wasn't an absolute zero. It's really looking at it as a continuous improvement process and really disposing of as little as possible. Some of the key programs that we do are, and have been longstanding, so our city recycling ordinance, that's been since 2008, and that's requiring single family, multifamily, commercial properties, permitted special events, basically to have recycling programs. It really covers the blue bin materials, so your paper and cardboard and all of those. Our construction demolition debris ordinance, which covers construction, demolition, also your alteration or tenant improvement projects. And with that, there's basically a 65% waste diversion requirement, and it helps satisfy our Cal Green building code requirements that are put on the city, but also key is it's a waste diversion policy. Kind of shifting gears, some of the state laws, AB 939 basically set the standard back in originally in 1989, but the due dates the initial due dates were 2000, really for key critical due dates for 50% diversion by jurisdictions. That really led to the requirement for all these programs that we implement. AB 341 is mandatory commercial recycling. That's basically similar to our local recycling ordinance, but at a state level, requiring all businesses and multifamily properties above a certain requirement, a certain threshold to recycle. AB 32, that's the overall greenhouse gas reduction requirements and targets, which a lot of these things support. AB 1826 is considered the commercial organics recycling requirement, and that basically requires yard trimmings and non-hazardous wood waste to be collected from multifamily properties, whether it be through a hauler or through landscapers or others, but really diverting it. But then also for businesses, it's those materials plus food material, food waste, or food soiled paper if mixed with food. And that's primarily if you have on-site a restaurant or cafeteria, things like that. SB 1383, I'll cover this in more detail later. This is the next step that is very aggressive, and it's really targeting organic waste, and it's rethinking what they define as organic waste. And this is the biggest undertaking that's been required of local jurisdictions since AB 939 back in 1989. So really quickly, zero waste, it's really just rethinking how we treat our discards and really thinking of them as commodities with potential as opposed to just waste that goes away, because at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to what is away. And as we know, the things don't just disappear. So it's really kind of flipping the pyramid that was traditionally done over the years, but really looking towards prevention, reuse, recycling, composting, and ultimately getting to the point of disposing of as little as possible. Quick snapshot of the City of San Diego's collection services. So we as I mentioned before, we service the bulk of the homes and small multifamily complexes in the city, and we provide 2 bin to 3 bin service. So the refuse bin, the blue bin for the recyclable materials, and then we do yard waste recycling for about 2/3 of the homes currently, and that will have to expand here in the future. And then a side that many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with, especially if you're operating facilities here in City of San Diego, is collection services for all the commercial properties, the larger multifamily, private residential, so on residences on private streets, and special events and things like that are done by non-exclusive franchise haulers. So basically, the City of San Diego allows 21 franchisees to operate. And these are your companies such as Edco or Republic or Waste Management, Debris Box, Allen Company. There's a number of them, but basically they provide the service to your facilities, and they offer a wide suite of services, and we put certain requirements on them to protect the public health and safety, also ensure they're meeting, doing the waste diversion activities to help us ensure that the city meets the state mandates and that we don't get fined by the state and things like that. We also, quickly, I'll touch on just some general information about recycling. And this would apply both at home and at your office or at your place of business. And generally, this is just a snapshot of the things that are recyclable in the commingled or mixed recycling program. So your blue bin or your recycling dumpster, and it's the variety of paper and office paper, cardboard, junk mail, bottles and cans, a wide variety of things. Some things, this is also just keeping in mind some best practices. If you have shredded paper, to bag it. If you have a pizza box, if the top is okay but the bottom is greasy, tear off the bottom and throw that in the trash, but recycle the top part that's the clean cardboard. It's fine to keep your tops on bottles. And we ask that you don't throw plastic bags in the bins. If you have plastic bags that you're not reusing, you can take those to the grocery stores. They usually have a bin at the front of the store where you can put your clean plastic bags in there for recycling. And we really, overall, we just recommend you keep things empty, clean, and dry, particularly for containers, food containers, things like that. Some things that often come up that people get confused about is things such as plastic straws or utensils or napkins, plastic film or plastic wrap, chip bags, things like that. Those are items that you would go ahead and put into your trash container and then just not put it into the recycling container, because it basically just contaminates and complicates the system. This is an image of what a typical recycling facility will look like for these mixed recyclables. And basically it's a huge system of conveyors and sorting equipment that basically takes in the mixed material and sorts it out to the individual commodity level or specific groupings of commodities. And it involves as much automation as they can, and some even use optical sorting or optical sorting for certain aspects. But the key thing is, at the end of the day, there are human beings there that are there either manually pulling out certain items, either positively, such as maybe cardboard in certain situations, or they're doing quality control and taking out chip bags and diapers and just all those things that don't go in there, or garden hoses and things. These pictures kind of show a typical sort line. To the left, it's this material coming across, and the workers are doing various tasks. And you'll see that basically towards the bottom, it's on the left, it's a series of screens. It's called a disc screen, but basically it's a whole series of axles and rotating wheels that basically are set at different intervals and speeds to separate the material. But you can see the one on the left is fairly clean, but you're still things getting wrapped in it. But then the one to the left is a typical scene partway through a day at these facilities, and they have things such as plastic bags, electrical cords, conduit, garden hoses, just all these things that a lot of times people are well-intentioned and they put in there, but then you have to have somebody actually climb in there and physically cut and pull and remove those items to clean things up. So it's quite a task. So we really recommend not putting those items in there. Quick information about the construction demolition ordinance. I won't cover much on this. I know all of you are, I'm sure, really familiar with a lot of these materials, but when we look at what's in the waste stream still that goes to the landfill, even 25% of all the material that goes in, much of it is things like clean concrete, clean wood, drywall, metals, the cardboard from the projects. It's not technically construction demolition waste, but it all contributes. And facilities such as Sanco's mixed C&D facility in Lemon Grove, or the separated recyclers that do concrete and wood waste and things. There's a lot. We're fortunate that our region has a lot of really great resources. Another thing that we're really proud of, and it's helping us towards the upcoming state mandates, is our commercial food scraps composting programs. And this is really your large venues such as the airport, convention center, Petco Park, SeaWorld, the large universities, corporate kitchens. It goes all the way from these huge generators all the way down to small to medium-sized restaurants. But they're basically taking their food scraps that otherwise would be going in the trash, setting it into a separate container, and then they're taking it to our composting facility at Miramar, where it's made into compost and ultimately a soil amendment that our region desperately needs, and it really, anything we can do to help the soil. We also do a donation program that we help coordinate, and we work a lot with the food banks and recovery organizations, and it's basically help taking, in addition to the composting that these members do, many of them donate edible food, and it might be something that is just maybe they ordered more than they need, or it could be something that has a blemish or bruise where it might not fit some of the appearance standards that they'd want in their 5-star dining room, but it's still a perfectly good apple or a tomato or that. And so we work closely, and I'll show another slide, with nonprofits, well, the food banks, but also a group called Kitchens for Good, where they're taking that and using those as, instead of it going to landfill, they're taking this good usable food and turning it into meals for those in need. And it's really a great thing, really positive. This is a quick some snapshots of our Miramar Greenery composting facility. It's 75 acres on the landfill, and it's unique because we're actually operating on top of old landfill, so it's on top of trash. So we have times where there's settlement and things that we have to deal with, but we process over 100,000 tons a year of yard trimmings and wood scraps and food waste and make it into really good usable products. We also recently had a grant from Cal Recycle, the state agency, that we were able to get what they call as a covered aerated static pile composting system. And basically we'll be able to add additional food scraps. We currently are able to do about, in addition, we do about 7,500 tons a year currently, but we'd be able to add another 12,500 tons of food scraps, up to about 20,000 plus more yard trimmings. But basically we compost it under this tarp system that also has a series of pipes in it, and it uses temperature sensors and oxygen sensors, and basically it puts air into the system, into the material, to help ensure that it's aerated. And it's a best management practice basically to help break down the material and produce a high quality compost. The other aspect is we were able to do a small component of the grant, but it had a really great benefit, is with Kitchens for Good. We were able to partner with them, and this back as of February, they had already diverted over 90,000 pounds of rescued food and made over 90,000 meals from that material. And Kitchens for Good is really great because they take a lot of people with barriers to employment. Some of them are people who have come out of the foster system, or also some out of incarceration or other challenges, but they have barriers to employment. And it's really giving them the culinary skills and other job training skills that are really, really great and really positive, and really make a big difference, especially these days with everything with COVID, and they're feeding a lot of people. So these are just a couple quick photos of the compost system. Basically, to the left is what our material would have looked like before, and to the top right, it's basically big blankets on them, is a simplified way to say it, but it really works out very well. Now I want to kind of quickly go through Senate Bill 1383 and some of the requirements that's putting on the jurisdictions, but ultimately it will have an impact on your operations as well. And
Ken,
yes.
I just had a real quick question from Heather Cullen. She's wondering if residents can put food scraps into the green waste bin.
Oh, currently, no. It's something that in the future, by 2022, the answer will have to be yes. But currently, it's only clean yard trimmings and clean wood material, wood scrap, things like that. But unfortunately, no food scraps. If you had an orange tree that trimmed that had some old oranges or something, that's okay. But we can't advocate putting in fruit and vegetable trimmings, things like that.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we have a great backyard composting program where we give discounts on compost bins at Dixieline, that if they want to compost at home, it's a great program. So quickly on 1383, it was actually signed by the Governor Brown in 2016, and basically sets very aggressive goals for organic waste reduction in the state. They spent 2 years doing informal rulemaking, and then in 2019 they started a formal rulemaking, and we're actually still going. The actual first requirement of 50% reduction in organic waste disposal statewide actually was required as of January 1, but here we are almost into June and we still don't have the implementation regulations yet. And fast forward, the requirement on jurisdictions and on generators is that they have to have collection programs and a number of other things in place by January 1, 2022. And by 2024, the city will be forced, and jurisdictions will be forced to enforce these requirements on generators. And if the state feels that the city doesn't do a good enough job, the state will go fine the generator, and then they'll fine us for not fining the generator. So it's definitely a different recipe than AB 939, which had a lot of requirements and the possible financial penalty, but really recognized good faith effort. Now it's a lot more, it's all hammer as opposed to carrot. Or that kind of thing, more stick than carrot or that. But basically by 2025, there's supposed to be a statewide reduction, 75% reduction in organic waste disposal statewide, and also at least 20% increase in edible food recovery. And we're still working out how those will be measured, but definitely well-intentioned, but very, very aggressive targets. And so with the timeline, basically by 2022, there have to be organic collection services to all. So whether it's the residences or also the businesses, basically everyone. And it will be different because they are now going to be defining organics as actually including a lot of paper products and other things that are actually in your blue containers or in the mixed recycling. So it's really basically ensuring that all have mixed recycling and then all have mixed organics recycling. So that'll be the yard trimmings and food scraps and non-hazardous wood waste, food soiled paper, those types of things. But they'll have to be the collection programs, but then we'll also have to have some place to take it. So we need a lot of infrastructure. And there's a lot of reporting requirements on this jurisdictions, as well as in getting information from generators and haulers, and also self-haulers. So if you haul it from your own business yourself or using your employees, there's just a lot of pieces to it. There also will be a lot of procurement, requirements where the cities will have to do a lot of purchasing of, we already do a lot of recycled paper content and a lot of things that are environmentally preferable, so less toxic, less hazardous, things like that. But now they're going to be even more aggressive on paper products and things, but also a very large use of compost and also fuels made from the recovered organics. So a lot of like recovered natural gas and things. And then, as I mentioned before, by 2024, we have to do the aggressive enforcement. And one thing that I'll mention quickly is for our local recycling ordinance, we're going to be going in the coming months to City Council to basically do the first phase that will support this. It's actually of the existing AB 1826, the mandatory commercial organics requirement that puts certain requirements on multifamily properties for the yard trimmings and non-hazardous wood waste, and on the businesses for the food scraps and food soiled paper mixed with food, plus the yard trimmings in that. And really, basically with that, if a property has less than 1/2 of cubic yard of any of those organic materials per week, they would not have to recycle. But if you have a decent sized property, if you have a cafeteria or something, it'll definitely apply. If you also have a lot of landscaping, it very easily will require it, but you can take care of that through your landscaper. So honestly, that's something that's probably already being done. But I wanted to make sure I mentioned that's something that's coming. And that was something that was envisioned in our zero waste plan back in 2015, long before the 1383 requirements. I've touched on a lot of these, but it just really, this really shows that there's just a lot of components to this, and a lot of requirements for the actual collection, for the education, reporting, enforcement. There's just, it's huge. This is a big thing on jurisdictions and a huge ask, both of the jurisdictions and of the generators. So of course, a lot of planning for all of those various elements, and a lot of challenges. Of course, there's the cost side, and in San Diego, we have a really unique situation because of what's called the People's Ordinance of 1919, and that's all those customers that are serviced by the city of San Diego do not pay a direct fee for service. The city's actually precluded from charging a fee for the services. So if you lived in La Mesa or Encinitas or any of the other local cities, Chula Vista, all the other local cities, the residents pay a direct fee for service, just like your businesses do, and the businesses do here in San Diego. But in San Diego, we don't. So we have all these requirements on us. And of course, CalRecycle's not giving the city any money to do this for SB 1383, but we have to come up with a way to be able to provide additional services, additional frequency of service, just, it's on and on and on, just really a big thing. But then also, once we actually collect the material, we have to have a place to take it. So some of the material can go to our composting facility, and thankfully EDCO is building an anaerobic digestion facility at its facilities in Escondido, and also at its facility in Barrio Logan and others. So it's coming along, but we're going to need a lot of other private facilities to be able to take these mixed organic materials, so the yard trimmings and food scraps and everything, and be able to make it either into compost or anaerobically digest it and make either soil amendments, recovered the RNG, or if they can be vehicle fuel or make electricity. There's a lot of things that can be done, but it's all very, very expensive. additional education, additional enforcement, just everything comes at a cost. And ultimately, for most, and especially for all of your members, it really comes down to, it becomes an additional cost on the business itself and on the generator. So one of the key things is looking for ways to minimize and optimize the collection services, your suite of services. So right sizing your service. So that way you don't have, basically you're not paying to service empty bins. So you're really trying to time it to where the trash is only services at the frequency where you can actually, the bin's basically full or close to full. Same with the recycling, same with the organics. Some of the restaurants and cafeterias, they may not have yard trimmings, so they might actually have a dedicated food scraps container. But it's something just to think of. And it affects various departments, and I'll just mention this quickly, but of course environmental services, we do a lot of this planning and implementation and enforcement. We also regulate the haulers, but it comes down to development services department, both for the California Green Building Code and certain requirements of that, but also with the water efficient landscaping ordinance requirements that they have from the state. Also public utilities, both is a very large generator of the biosolids that falls under this umbrella, but also all of our departments as generators, whether it be a library or a rec center or an office building or the biosolids plant that produces 120, 130,000 tons a year of biosolids. It's a huge undertaking. So that really covers the main points I wanted to mention, and I really appreciate the time and the opportunity and letting me participate in your meeting.
Does anyone have any questions for Ken? You can unmute yourself or you can use the chat function.
I had a question. Ken, what do you Barry with J&M Keystone? What do you think is the reality of, when we're recycling the stuff that some of the Chinese recyclers are not even accepting anymore? And like how much of the recycling is actually just going into the dump anyway? Is there any reality on that?
Well, it's a great question, Barry, and thank you for asking. That is something that has really upset our whole apple cart as far as just with China, their national sword policy. They basically prohibited the import of most recyclable commodities, and because China produced so much of the goods that are used throughout the world, they were also commanding most of the markets for the commodities that go into the goods, so the recycled paper, the metals, the plastics, and they basically turned off the tap. And it made the recyclers have to find other markets for the materials. And so it really, a lot of the materials, thankfully our materials, shorter answer, our materials, thankfully our processors have very good reputations and make very good quality products that meet the specs. And so they're able to continue to recycle that material. So our materials are still being recycled. They're having to shift to other markets, thankfully some more domestic, but so much of the manufacturing is done overseas that the demand for the commodities is overseas. But then it basically, instead of going to China, will go to a lot of other countries, whether it be Indonesia, Vietnam, some to the Philippines, a lot to India, other countries as well. It just really depends on where they have a need for it. But logistically, it's a lot harder because there were so many, the goods came from China to the ports, offloaded, they took the recyclables, went straight back to China. It was just a really easy backhaul, basically. But now it's a lot different. But one of the key things for our residents and for the businesses is really keeping the correct materials in the bin. So really just putting the right materials in and that they're really clean, just meeting the general requirements. That's really important, as opposed to, say, someone who's well-intentioned where they might say, well, I have this garden hose, or I have this bicycle tire, or even the half full thing of peanut butter or something. Those are things that you definitely don't want to include.
Nice, Ken. There was another question from one of our members who's a homeowner who's asking, she's saying there are specific recycle bags that they're supposed to put mixed use material in their houses. Should they be putting those directly into the recycle trash can, or dumping the items out of the bags directly into the can?
You would want to put the materials into the blue bins loose. So except for shredded paper, you'd bag the shredded paper, preferably in a paper bag. But that's the one thing that if you don't have a paper bag, if you can tie it into a plastic bag and it's kind of easy to tell that it's shredded paper, that's okay. But otherwise, any of your other materials, we really ask that you put it in loose, because it makes it much easier to process when it gets to the facility. Because if not, they have to either try to tear the bag open, or they have to, or it might throw out the whole contents. But yeah, really just, you know, keeping it clean and just empty, just pour it in the recycling bin or dumpster, and then, you know, go until the next time.
Okay. And then another comment is, what is your response that the act of recycling products actually causes more pollution than the items themselves?
You would have to look at a case-by-case specific analysis, but generally speaking, using recycled material, the product itself, or that recovered commodity to make into a new product takes much less energy and resources than making it from virgin material. So using aluminum to make new aluminum cans, as opposed to actually mining the bauxite or the different components and making the aluminum, that's much more resource intensive. And with glass, just a lot of things, it just really, it just really utilizing those resources. Great questions.
Yeah. One from Will Smith: when we put items loose in the recycling bin, many of the lighter weight items end up on the street in our neighborhood where the bins are emptied. Are there any solutions to this problem?
Generally, it's about unfortunately not a whole lot. I think the big thing is if you put the bin out, really keeping the lid on and keeping it closed. And the vehicles are really designed, I mean, as much as they pick up the container and take it and dump it, they're really designed to minimize the material that could escape. You could maybe try kind of framing around the edges, and most people don't want to go to this step, but you can maybe try, as much as you want to have all your cardboard and things broken down flat, you could maybe try framing the edges with the cardboard and maybe putting the loose things in the middle. So as it all, maybe it kind of slides down in a big kind of clump, if you will. But yeah, it's unfortunate that, that sometimes there is some litter, but generally I think regardless of whether it's the city's trucks or the private trucks, they largely do a good job of capturing it, not having the litter escape. And when they're driving on the freeways and stuff, the trucks have covers and things to help keep from escaping there.
Great. Are you able to answer what happens to the materials that can't be recycled, like utensils or wrappers?
Those are materials that would either be picked off the line or by either the equipment or by the employees and go to the landfill, or unfortunately they could end up in the sorted recyclables. So say maybe the mixed paper that's all your newspaper or your junk mail and office paper and things like that, it could potentially have these plastic utensils, knives or forks or things in there, and that's what jeopardizes the quality and the marketability of those recyclables. But the one thing to think of with the utensils or the really small items is you have this conveyor belt that's going by faster than you could walk. And with other things, and these people are wearing 2 or 3 pairs of gloves often, and they're trying to manually pick off these things. I mean, some of it now with the optical sorts, they can use an optical sensor and a blast of air to capture some things, but with a lot of it, it's a person trying to grab it, and picture doing that, for hours and hours at a time. It's a really daunting task.
Definitely. We have a few more questions. One is that Thor Emblem found this to be very informative, and he learned a lot about what can be recycled. Are there any plans to get this information out to a wider audience?
We do a lot of community booths. Well, when in normal times, without all the COVID and that, we do a lot of community booths, and we do educational presentations in the schools and to community groups and things. We have a couple of really nice videos on our website. One is kind of what goes where, so it's really what to put in the blue bin, and then the other is what happens to it once it's collected. And there's video footage of material recovery facilities and showing the material actually separated out to the commodities. But there's something that we definitely always could do more, and we look at more we could do for online content, but also speaking to groups, whether it's our own staff or our educational contractors. We always love the opportunity to be able to help spread the word. And we also do an annual mailer to our customers who receive the service from the city, and that way it's partly a collection calendar, but partly what goes where and some informational things that we hope are helpful.
Okay. The questions keep flowing, so I'm just going to read them in order now. From Barry Garson: okay. Is it true that you are not supposed to put palm tree leaves in the green waste bins?
If it's at your residence, and this is where I hate to send mixed signals, but if it's at your home, you can put palm fronds in with your other yard trimmings, with your grass clippings and other tree trimmings. That's okay. If it was to go to, if you were taking a load to our composting facility at Miramar, unfortunately, currently it would have to not include palm fronds. The palm fronds would actually have to go for disposal. In the coming months, we'll have a new material type. So if you self-haul, you do a cleanup at your house and you take it, or if you have a landscaper who takes it, we'll be able to accept loads at the greenery. It'll be a little more expensive, but you could accept mixed palm and yard trimmings and things like other yard trimmings. But yeah, we do have basically, and sorry to make this a really long answer, but at the residence, it's kind of the dilution is the solution to pollution kind of thing, because if you go down a street, you might have a few homes that have a lot of palm trees, and the next one might just have grass clippings. Ultimately, by the time it gets to our facility, it's mixed pretty well, so it doesn't cause a problem for our equipment. But if we take specific chunk, like just a whole load of palm fronds and run it through our grinder without being able to set it aside and let it dry out, it's really fibrous and it really just basically gums up our grinder. And then we have to go and start pulling the stuff out. So sorry, that's probably way too much information, but thank you for asking.
All right, this one's from Shelby Ballou. Since plastic bags are not to be put in blue bins, does that also mean any type of plastic packaging should not be put in blue bins?
Well, the film plasticking or flexible packaging, so plastic bags or shrink wrap or Ziploc bags, things like that would not go in the blue bin. If they're clean, especially say if you had pallet wrap or if you had plastic bags from the grocery store or something, those could definitely go back to the grocery store if they're clean. But otherwise, the plastic materials that could go in the blue bin would really be the more rigid materials. So your things like bottles and yogurt tubs and to-go trays or the clamshell containers. And sorry, you probably can't see my hands very much, but those various like kind of, the sides are hard or firm. So just as opposed to the film.
Okay. From Rachel Willis, how does our recycling or composting program compare to that of other states?
Generally, California, as a city, but also as a state, California is typically kind of a leader in recycling. There's other areas in the country that do really well, especially in the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of great efforts in Oregon and Washington State. There's a lot of efforts in parts of Texas, such as in Austin and Denton and other places, and some efforts in other jurisdictions, some in New York. And I mean, there's a lot of great things going on throughout the country. But as far as the requirements that are put on cities, but also the overall efforts and the diversion rates that are realized, generally the Southern California city or the California cities really lead the way. Like we do a great job. Some of the jurisdictions in the Bay Area with San Francisco and San Jose and Oakland, some of them will actually have a higher diversion rate than us. And also recently the city of Los Angeles took a number of steps to change their collection system around to help increase their diversion requirements. They're looking at a goal of at least 80% diversion. Gosh, I think here in the next year or so, maybe even already came to fruition. But San Francisco has been running around 80% diversion, where San Diego overall, we've been right around 66% overall for a number of years, kind of in that 66, 67, 68 range. But we really need to boost it up.
Okay. Another question from Heather Collins. Why do some cities allow large styrofoam sheets or items to be put in the bins like Encinitas, but others like Carlsbad do not?
Generally, polystyrene foam or styrofoam or expanded polystyrene foam is very difficult to recycle, and it's also easily contaminated. Some more jurisdictions than not, or programs than not, do not accept the material. They'll also be more likely to accept the block packaging that say came with a computer monitor or a TV or something, as opposed to a food container, a cup or a clamshell. And that's often because the cups and clamshells will be contaminated. They'll be dirty with the residue from the takeout food or things like that. Currently in San Diego, we are still accepting the block packaging, the polystyrene block packaging and food containers, but there is actually an ordinance on the books that was brought forward by Councilmember Ward to prohibit the use of polystyrene products both at city facilities, but also for sale in the city. It's currently on hold due to pending litigation from the few restaurants and California Restaurant Association and Dart Container, one of the main manufacturers. So we're currently not implementing that, but more and more jurisdictions, especially here in Southern California and in California, have been taking steps to basically prohibit the styrofoam, and that will also lead to less of a need to recycle it. The other thing is kind of the shorter answer, and sorry, I'm giving you really long answers, but the shorter answer is that it's usually really expensive to recycle and very contaminated. So like last year we spent, I think it was about $180,000 in processing costs for the polystyrene, and we got about 15 tons of material, as opposed to the cardboard would have probably been more like 30,000 tons or something from the program. So it's just, it's really a very marginal material as far as it's really light, it's messy, it's hard to recycle, and it's often contaminated. So it's challenging. I mean, we're able to do it, but it's expensive.
So this kind of feeds into the next question from R. Wagner. Many restaurant carryout containers vary on firmness and or could be considered a soft or flexible plastic. Is there an easy way to determine which container should be placed in recycling versus the trash? Oh,
great. These are great questions. Really, I would think of it as if it's plastic, say like a plastic bag, if it's a film, or if it's really flexible. So if it's just a plastic bag or a wrapper, I would say no. But if it's actually a container such as a tub or a tray or a plate or a clamshell container with a top and a bottom that kind of goes together, those would all be, or a cup. Those types of things could go in the blue bin, just as long as they're clean. So you don't have to sit there and wash it, but really give it a rinse or give it a wipe. So just so that really the contents have been used. And if you have something that's really excessively stained, and if it's a rigid plastic thing, it won't really be the case. But if you had something that was just really had this like melted on goo, or say with the polystyrene where you can see you can tell exactly where everything was, and it just looks gross, that you're just gonna put that in the trash, because it's loaded down with oils and residue from the food.
Perfect. From Amber Molina, what measures will be or can be taken in commercial settings to reduce the pest control and odor issues associated with compost waste? These are great questions. It really comes down to one of the biggest things is collection frequency. So with the food scraps, it's really having a good system in place where the collection point in the kitchen, you're able to get the material, take it out to the container, and the container is really sealed. So if it's a large facility, it might have a large sealed compactor, like a giant trash compactor that's dedicated for food, or otherwise if it's a dumpster or a cart, really the haulers will make sure that the lids sit really flush or flat on the body of the container. So it's really not having gaps, so it's harder to get odors or vectors in there. But the big thing is really servicing it at a frequency. It has to be serviced at least every week, but really, if it's accumulating, really getting it serviced, and then also whether the facility staff can clean the container, the cart, or the bin, or whether it's something the service provider does. But it's just, the more you can really just keep cycling through the material and keeping the containers clean, it goes a long way. But it's a really complicated material, as she pointed out. From Barry Garson, why do the trash trucks always beat up the cans so badly? Is there anything being done to fix this?
Well, it's the trucks are designed to pick up the cans, and I mean it's hard because you have a can that's set up, the big 96-gallon cans, the largest carts that you say the black carts in San Diego, they can really hold up to 300 pounds. Not that we want people putting 300 pounds in them, but the trucks have to be able to operate whether that container has 5 pounds in it or more. But they basically try to optimize it so that, of course, they're going to pick up the bin and service it and put it back down. And you want it to be a really smooth process. Sometimes it will get there will be containers that break. One of the challenges we have specifically in City of San Diego is that there's still a lot of trash cans out there, the black automated carts that were rolled out in 1995, and they're still in service. And those containers really have about a 10-year warranty. They're a 10-year warranty, so they really figure the useful life's about 10 years. But they're going a lot longer, and we've had people that have replaced them. Say they got 10, 12, 14 years out of them. They've replaced them, and they're coming up on the next kind of end of that expected life. But it's really a challenge because, the drivers definitely aren't intentionally doing something to beat up the containers. It's just a matter of, the picking up with the automated arm where it grabs the container and tips it into the truck is much more efficient than a driver having to get out of or an assistant having to get out of the truck, grab the container, tip it by hand. It's more efficient, but ideally, and I'm sure the truck companies or the arm companies are always doing things to try to make so that the containers, the process of tipping it is smoother, and then the manufacturers look for ways to make the bins be able to stand up to it. Sorry, really long answer, sorry.
That's okay. And then another one from Heather Collins. I think this one's especially applicable with COVID, but if paper towels are just being used for wiping hands or wiping up water and they aren't really dirty, can you put those in the blue bin?
No, and thank you for asking. Any type of tissue or napkin or that, you wouldn't want to put in the blue bin. It's something that if you had a home composting bin, you could put it there, or once we have, say the customers who have food scraps collection and they're using paper towels, say in their kitchen prep, we work with them and allow them to put those in their compost collection. But for the blue bin, no, and it's hard because they're often contaminated with things, but also that material just really breaks down. The fibers are really short, and it just mixes up with the other product.
Perfect. Those are all the questions in the chat. If anyone has anything else to add.
Nothing else?
One other thing. When is the next e-waste recycling event? From Sonia Mira.
For e-waste recycling, the city doesn't normally host them. We allow the collection of, there's a lot of companies out there in facilities that will take in electronics, for drop off, and those would be free. Even our recycling center at Miramar takes in computer monitors and equipment and things like that. As far as collection events, those are typically done by private companies that are certified by the state. We do occasionally have a large annual cleanup event in the spring down at the stadium that we take some of the equipment. I think in recent years we've taken some electronics. I know we've definitely taken batteries and some light bulbs in that, but with COVID we had to suspend or postpone that event. At this point, I'm not sure when we'll be able to reschedule it.
Okay. And that is all the questions I have. I'm checking all the mediums, email, cell phone, chat. We are done.
You had the hardest job.
Yeah.
Great, yeah, she did. Well, thank you, Ken. I really appreciate it. I think that was highly informative, not just for commercial real estate, but also on a residential level. So it definitely affects all of us. And you can tell how engaged we were by all of the good thought-provoking questions they all had. So great info. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me, and probably more than you ever want to know or hear about trash or that. But no, great questions. Everybody's keeping me on my toes, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again. I also want to thank Gary Griffin with Harborough again for being our May membership meeting sponsor. We really appreciate it. And also, I want to encourage everyone, please feel free to share your videos. I want to see your faces. So please don't be shy. We'd love to see you, since this is how we'll be seeing each other, at least for the near future here. Please stay tuned for details on our next virtual event. So stay close to your email inbox. Please be sure to